on what it was before. I have the strengths and weaknesses of truth are subjective because truth is undefinable and paradoxical.
Okay.
But I don't know where to go from there.
Wasn't in the strength and weakness columns something about well, do you have the notebook? What was in the strength and weakness
Yeah,
column?
we said the one strength we got was like it guides people, but then we said it gives us answers, but then it gives us more questions.
I say we go with that. We work that. I mean, I say we lay the argument for proving our thesis statement, and then find some way to transition into the whole thing about it having answers and questions and all that.
I was trying to do that. It's words are hard on paper.
Thank you,
Don't
Tom.
like them.
Well, I don't know. Let's just, I guess, talk it out like we did before, and then write that. Basically, you can modify it a little bit, of course, but that will be
Just
a
trying with like an example, like if a person sees a mirage, the mirage is false, so it is not true. Well, what they saw was not true, but the experience of seeing it was true, and so is the entire occurrence, the entire event, true or false. And then it gets weird because truth itself is completely relative and subjective, because if you're saying that something is false, then that's true. But if that's not true, then it's false. But then if you're saying that again is false, that's true.
Oh.
And you could go on like this forever.
Okay, so I guess we just have to avoid putting ourselves in that paradox, because that's something we can't argue in a 2-paragraph essay.
I know.
Okay, so
where should we start? We need a good starting point.
alright, well, what was the thesis statement again? I'm sitting in front of my laptop. I want to...
The strengths and weaknesses of truth are subjective because truth is undefinable and paradoxical. Which I checked, paradoxical is a word. It's not paradoxal.
Yes. Okay. Because... Do you think that Banksy will be upset with big words?
I really don't care right now because I have so many to be verbs in here. But you can't get rid of to be verbs when you're talking about such an abstract concept as truth, because there's no concrete verb. It doesn't do anything concrete.
How about this? The strength, or the greatest strength and weakness of... Actually, I don't know how to do it, but just based off of this, strength and weakness... The strength and weaknesses of truth are subjective because of truth's state of, whatever. And move from that. Just stuff like that to eliminate 2V verbs.
Uh-huh.
No, huh?
Hello?
Hello?
What's going on?
Colin.
I lost my train of thought.
Good God.
I don't know, there's so much we went over, I don't know where to start. I guess the best, do we want to start on elaborating on what we had just said, or do we want to start with, examples within each?
Descartes-style philosophy. Let's start from the beginning and ration our way to that statement in the most condensed way possible.
Our thesis statement is very hard because it says the strengths and weaknesses, subjective, undefinable, and paradoxical. It's like you could start with any one of those, but if you start with any one else, you're leaving out the other, which is just as important. And then somewhere along the line, you're getting away from truth, which is... Anyways, I think we will do better than most people because I heard people on the bus freaking out about it.
Yeah, I was talking to people in the Afro-Asians class. They were all having a heart attack 'cause they didn't know where to go with this.
At least they could figure out what page it was on.
I had to tell them. Yeah.
So should we start with strengths and weaknesses, it being subjective, or it being undefinable and paradoxical?
Let's start with the definition of truth. Very basic. With the undefinable part.
I guess that's a good place to start, because if we say the thesis statement and then point out how the thesis statement is completely fucked up, then it's a good place to start in our journey down the rabbit hole.
If you want to put it like that, I suppose, yes. Alright, so do you remember from 7th period what was the initial thing we were trying to define truth, right? Do you remember what our initial definition of truth was?
Truth is, I think we were trying to say that, like, truth is anything that is real, but we live in a universe where nothing is really real.
What wasn't it something along the lines of it's what's it called? Perfectly accurate. It's that truth itself, while we couldn't perceive it, will always be correct.
Yeah, I think.
And
so
then
truth itself, the concept, is true. But yeah, so truth itself is completely true in all forms. But we use it in many different ways in a universe that is not true in any form.
yes. Oh. Okay. So let's see. The concept of truth itself is absolutely true. Could you remember? Go ahead.
Oh, I'm trying to figure out what I'm writing.
Yeah, I'm basically taking notes by this point. I'm not gonna try and arrange it into sentences yet.
I can never take good notes beforehand. I have to do it like one draft, which really annoys Banksy.
Okay. Okay, so hold on, let's backtrack. Before we actually do this, let us refine the thesis statement. That way we know exactly what we're starting off with. That way we have no doubt what we're working from. And then we can trace the logic backwards.
Good idea. Her little pink paper is hard because it wants us to talk about the strengths and weaknesses of truth, except we got on the point where you can't talk about the strengths and weaknesses of truth because that's all completely subjective.
Okay.
Anything that truth can give you or take away from you, you are deciding if that was good or bad. And in that own thing, you are deciding what is true, what is not.
So we should probably just pick one strength, one weakness of truth, because we're going to spend a lot of time dedicated to the undefinable nature of truth, and this is why there are so few concrete strengths and weaknesses of truth.
Well, the one strengths and weakness we got was, well, we had strengths guides people and gives answers, and then weakness we have, it gives questions.
Okay. We can probably chop off the gives guidance and put questions and answers because they're kind of interrelated.
Yeah.
Which is good, seeing as they're on opposite sides. We can pull that off.
So we should just work off those two and use them to explain everything that's insane.
Yeah. Okay. And let's see here. So should we say the majority of the perceived strengths and weaknesses of truths, I don't know, exist subjectively because of truth's undefinable and paradoxical nature.
Sure.
Okay.
I'm keeping the other thing. Like, I think it's good for you to even do that, because, hey, then it looks less like plagiarism or whatever, cheating. I don't know. I don't think she'll care. Because we're clearly going to be so far off the deep end. She'll be like, I'm just going to pass you two on this thing and forget it ever happened. I hate that she doesn't want us to use to be verbs or to use we or you or any of that stuff. And yet, at the same time, those are the words they use in the philosophy book that she claims. Who writes like this? It's wonderful.
Yeah. I think actually she's kind of criticizing them when she says who writes like this, because she's making them out to be pompous and all that kind of stuff. The reason I think this is because I like the way they write in the philosophy book, and she doesn't like the way,
too.
and she doesn't like the way I write. So therefore, I'm kind of guessing here. Okay, so I have, now's my thesis statement: the majority of truth's strengths and weaknesses exist in a subjective state because of truth's undefinable and paradoxical nature. So we should find some way to establish that these are the two greatest, most concrete strengths, that truth gives answers, but as it gives answers, it poses more questions.
Yeah, I see on the little bit I've written, I have dug myself a very deep hole here, because, like, our thesis statement is great because it's so abstractly out there, you don't even need to prove it. It's just... But then, to elaborate in the concrete sense, you have to state something. But then in stating something about truth, it keeps popping into my mind, well, how do we know that that's true? Oh, then we should start somewhere simpler. But then how do you know that's true? You can't really go any simpler, because you're asking, well, how is that true in the first place? And if you prove how that's true, you say, well, how is your proof of that being true? And then this is all just pertaining to the thesis statement.
Okay. So we cannot apply that standard to our writing, as much as we may find that to ironically be the truth, our thesis statement, because if we did, we would be writing for 20 plus pages before we said anything.
It's true. We'll be like the Iliad.
Okay, so... Because of truth's undefinable and paradoxical nature.
So I think we're just going to have to, at some point, write a statement, a fact, and not explain it, because you need a foundation to begin with.
Yeah. I say we go at it very straightforward. The greatest, she complains about hyperbole too much for me to say the greatest and most concrete strength and weakness of truth are that, whatever.
Can there even be a hyperbole with truth? I think no matter what you say, it's a hypobole.
Hypobole?
Yes.
Alright, so,
no. I think I'm going to say truth gives answers, or something along that line, which I know it's like, well, how do you prove that? But I think in talking, it's weird. In using that as a foundation to elaborate on higher ideas, I am somehow going to answer that.
Yeah.
But I think it'll work. Can you use truth? Is it something that you can use?
What do you mean?
Well, because, I don't want to say truth gives answers. It's kind of like we use truth to find answers, but can you use truth?
Oh, okay.
Is it a medium for finding answers?
I'm not sure you can. Does it? I mean, technically it's a noun, correct?
Yeah.
So we might be able